Hello everybody, welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having an absolutely incredible day, and without any further ado, let's jump right into it. So clearly the person who was talking about this and or began discussing it clearly wanted some kind of fight to happen. And I mean that in like a very nice way. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Here's a little history lesson. One of the main ideas for Bitcoin for a very long amount of time now, I dare say over a decade, has been that eventually Bitcoin could replace the current financial system that we have. That is to say that Bitcoin would be used as a form of digital gold. That one we know already. And Bitcoin would be used as a daily mean of payment. We would all walk into stores and see things listed as Satoshis. And this would take years and years and years, but eventually at some point, we would only know Bitcoin, and or Bitcoin would live alongside other constantly devaluing fiat currencies and therefore become the biggest currency that we have on the planet. This is one of the general ideas. Of course, over the course of the next 3 halvings, we are expected to see some of that actually beginning to happen. On the other hand, there have been a number of altcoins over the course of the last decade that have lightly and or directly hinted that they plan on doing the exact same thing. One of them, if you've been here since roughly around 2017, is XRP. Yeah, I know, that's why I said, the guy was looking for a fight. The idea, for those of you who missed it, this is no longer explicitly the case. It's still a case, but not. We've seen other means of movement around this. The original case was that XRP would be kind of the version of a cryptocurrency that banks and institutions would want to use instead of having to use Bitcoin if they shied away from it, because Bitcoin is decentralized in like a hyperplanetary way, and therefore if institutions wanted to get in, XRP could be the thing that was dished out in a regulatory manner amongst banks and institutions, if you catch my drift. XRP is meant to be like, well, we're gonna have cryptocurrencies. Banks may not care for the pseudonymous version of new currency, and therefore they could use XRP instead. One of the main ideas around this began once again in around 2017, where people began to do calculations. Numbers don't lie. And people began to write down exactly how much money there is on the planet. So there are a couple of different numbers. You have the M1, the M2, and I believe there is also an M3 money supply, and that some of them are circulating. It's the unmoved money, and I think the last one is like money that is based in debt, which then puts the world's money supply in the quadrillions of dollars. It's something absolutely egregious. So, down the path of, if Bitcoin were to absorb the near entirety of the world's financial system, and we also saw that people began to transition debt into Bitcoin, that is to say, you owe 50,000 US dollars. The transition would be you now actually owe Bitcoin, money in Bitcoin and no longer in US dollars, therefore increasing the usage of Bitcoin. I know it's all a bit lightly complex, but try and stay with me. The other side of that coin has to do with XRP, and this began to bloom and blossom when we found out that XRP was not only initially meant to be for banks, but for world banks. And as we have heard over the course of this year alone, and I'll swing the pendulum anywhere from the number 13 to 30, as to the amount of central banks that we know that Ripple, the company, is currently working with, who are all going to be using XRP and the XRP blockchain to run their new central bank digital currency on top of. When you look at the actual... I told you to hold on. When you look at all the actual numbers and the idea behind all of this, it basically has to do with if instead of Bitcoin, and I could even say them side by side, if Bitcoin became a world currency and XRP was kind of used by the banks and the institutions as their other means of sending money around the world as well, in a more, if you will, regulated manner, exactly how high could XRP's price go? This was something that hasn't been spoken about for a number of years. This was such a popular topic 5, 6, 7 years ago, before we had the issue with the US SEC. But now it's beginning to pop up once again because, as I mentioned before in a number of other videos, the company Ripple mentioned that they would be doing things like this, partnering with banks and institutions and world banks, and now they're actually doing it. So people are like, wait, what happens if this continues happening and they continue having these partnerships and countries continue using the XRP blockchain for their central bank digital currencies? Had to give you a bit. There's a lot more to it, but a bit of a history lesson so that you understand that these numbers like have a meaning and it's not simply someone being like "Ba-derp-ba-derp" and just throwing numbers out there. The head of social adoption at XRP Healthcare, his name is Edward Farina, has made a hyper bullish case prediction for XRP potentially being able to hit a number if Ripple's network, RippleNet, which has been named XRapid, and I forgot what it's called now. I think it's called just Ripple Payments or something like that. If that one network alone should replace something called Swift, which is basically the messaging system that came out in the 1970s that a large number of banks are still using to transact between themselves. So you would assume that in the year 2023, banks and institutions transacting and sending money around would be using a faster system. A lot of what you currently see right now, depending on which app you're using to send money or whatever bank tells you, hey, send money instantaneously, what they're actually giving is an IOU. So the money posts to your account instantaneously in a form of a digital credit. You are not being handed paper money. You are simply seeing that these numbers have posted to your account, and they expect if you use them, there will be another form of debt that will be issued in their place. The actual base layer, if you will, which could be considered like the bank's Bitcoin, I don't know, called Swift, is a messaging system, once again from the 1970s that they're still using. So when you see that the numbers on your screen have changed instantaneously, behind the scenes, it still has to go through this entire old system. And this is what Ripple years ago said that they were trying to actually replace. And we even see the beginnings of the actual current replacement of that system through the lens of the cryptocurrency space and the institutions adopting, and I don't even want to say slowly, the fact that we've gotten this far in less than a decade with XRP and all the other coins and the adoption rate by central banks, we're actually moving at lightning speed compared to how long I thought a lot of this would have to take off. Did I even say the number? I don't think I did. He believes that if XRP were to actually replace the current global banking system, we would then see an XRP price between 9 to 10,000 US dollars. That's why I told you I had to give you like the history behind it, because if I just told you the number, you would have been like, that's nonsense. That's where the idea comes from. Edward Farina has recently proposed a scenario where XRP could soar to 10,000 US dollars as RippleNet takes over the legacy Swift system of cross-border payments. In a post on Twitter, Farina wrote about the tenets of market dynamics, arguing against popular misconceptions concerning XRP's potential growth trajectory. He said, few people seem to understand the principle of supply and demand. That's not even a joke. I think that's actually completely true. And I mean just from a standpoint, because I do think that a lot of numbers, the human mind has trouble conceiving exactly what these things are. We as humans are used to the numbers 4, 15, you can conceptualize 18 and a half, maybe even the number 100 as to how many that might actually be. Have you ever been in a stadium, like a football stadium, at a concert, at an opera? I don't know what people are doing with their lives. And you look around the room and you see other people there and you see the seats are filled. And then you find out that that stadium actually holds 45,000 people. Your brain didn't conceptualize that there were 45,000 people around you. And therefore, you don't actually understand like the levels of how many people there are out there. That's why when you say 8 billion people on the planet, it's a number. You, as someone who went to school, you understand the number 8 billion, but you can't conceptualize. If any of you get a chance, there are a couple of videos, like good ones as well, where people try to explain the idea of being a billionaire, and they show you like an actual graphics why the idea of a billionaire actually almost makes no sense. It's because the human mind can't conceptualize it, and the idea of actually working for it will never work out. You kind of always have to. Anyway, the point is, yes. So the idea of supply and demand, especially even if you grind it down to something like Bitcoin, you understand the number 21 million, but you don't really get what it means for MicroStrategy to hold 160,000 Bitcoin. You get the numbers because you know numbers, but from a worldwide standpoint, as far as like how much is being taken away, your brain literally can't get it. It's kind of if you ever, I forgot the exact, I mean, it is not the exact number. But from the observable universe, I think it's projected that there are, 100,000 million, I think that's the number, of planets that we can currently see from the satellites that are facing in like a current direction. The human mind can't grasp how many stars, how many planets. Anyway, that's whatever. Another conversation for another time. But he said, few people seem to understand the principle of supply and demand. I always see people being shocked when they see someone say that XRP can reach 10,000. He said, not saying that it necessarily will, but this is the idea in this scenario where XRP ends up taking over. And I mean, it's the same exact thing where we talk about a $100 million Bitcoin. The world system has collapsed and only Bitcoin remains. That's kind of the generalized idea. It's kind of like, it's similar to, I will say, a lot of times, and bless their hearts, I have a couple of friends who I think don't understand hype cycles, and also to a fault don't really understand market caps. In that, I was trying to discuss with it, and I don't think he listens, but if you do, hello. I was trying to discuss with a friend why a certain altcoin that I hold, I believe will be going to $1. And he was like, no, that doesn't make any sense because there's too many of the coin. And I asked him how long has he been in the market. He said around mid-2021. And I was trying to explain to him, I said, the coin has a very easy chance of going to $1 based off of the usage, based off of the partnerships, etc., but also just based off of the actual hype that will emerge in 2024, 2025. He didn't get it. So I had to explain to him that back in 2017, here we go, once again, XRP's price was half a cent, went to 1 cent, went to 10 cents, went to $1, went to $2, went to $3.80. And he was like, I don't get it. I said the circulating supply of XRP back then, I think was roughly, was it 47 billion coins or something like that. And then I had to multiply it for him and get to the actual number. And it came out to roughly more or less what this other coin that I'm talking about, that me thinking that it could go to $1. He's like, that's crazy. I was like, yeah, you don't understand that like the market is able to push that high because we're talking about hundreds of millions of people pushing in money into the market at the exact same time. So there's even a lot of times now where I've spoken with people and they ask me where I think Cardano can go, or XRP, or you name the other coins, and I tell them a price and they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, it's barely 3 times the previous all-time high. Like, that's like my, and I don't care for the term bear case, but that's like ground floor case for where I think a lot of these coins are going to go. And this is why I mentioned before in another video, I think newcomers and even people who were here since 2021, I think you understand where some of the prices can go, but you're going to be shocked to see where they actually go. You have in your mind that Cardano is going to reach $4, but if it does go to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, it's going to cause a frenzy, because the only people who really get it are the people who've been here for different cycles and understand exactly what hype and usage and partnerships and good news and updates and upgrades will actually do. That's why a lot of times when we talk about Bitcoin's price going to like 200, 300K, it's like, yeah, it's definitely possible. Supply and demand, the actual usage, like all the other things that are tied to it, you kind of get it. So as you might have imagined, this was very popular news. Anytime we get any type of this coin could reach some type of astronomical price news, it ends up taking off. I will say realistically, if this could ever happen, it would probably be like 2 decades from now. XRP is not hitting 10,000 next year, nor the year after. And I dare say as well, not 2028 either, unless we have some like hyper shift in the market. Movements like this take decades. The company Ripple has been doing exceedingly well. I'm still projecting at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, $15 XRP, just based off of the momentum that we've seen over the course of the last couple of years. But, you know, that's up for the market to decide, and we'll see exactly how crazy everything goes with ETFs and also the halving, and you basically name it. Like, people really aren't prepared for what's going to happen. And I don't want to say this phrase, but how much money they'll make. It always, we get to a euphoric phase in the market and people forget the profits that they've made. I also made I had this mistake last bull run as well. There were a couple of things I was holding. I'll even tell you. There were a couple of things I was holding from Vivi as well. I mean, got stuff for literally $6. Some of them skyrocketed to like 5,000, and the brain doesn't tell you that you've made an extreme profit. So your mind goes, well, clearly it's going to hit 10,000. Clearly it's going to go to 15. And then you know what happens after that. That's the extremely popular head of social adoption at XRP Healthcare says that if XRP should replace the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, it could potentially hit 5 figures. I think that would, if XRP, oh my gosh. I think a lot of Bitcoin maximalists would like, I think they would actually freak out. Like, I can't imagine. XRP hit almost $4 and they lost it. I don't know what they would do if XRP even hit $100. That'd be a day. That's the XRP news. And yeah, let's move on. Now, this one's actually very important. It's more of a where we're going in the future kind of thing. It says a fundamental aspect of Bitcoin's appeal lies in its status as a form of currency that is resistant to censorship and immune to arbitrary regulations. The idea is that anyone around the world with means to cover network fees should be able to engage in transactions without permission. There's something called OFAC, OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control. Is basically another branch of these things that tell people when you can and can't use your money, what you can and can't do. A number of years ago, And I mean, let's go like back to the beginning of Bitcoin, if you will. A lot of the news that was floating around was that Bitcoin was an anonymous currency, and this terrified governments and banks. The idea of people being able to move money around at any given time without permission, it drove them absolutely insane. And then people realized that Bitcoin is pseudonymous in that there's no name necessarily attached to your account. However, as we've seen in the last couple of years, you can attach your Visa card, your MasterCard, your PayPal, you name it, a bunch of different things to your wallets and therefore to all of your transactions. And therefore, while there's no explicit name on your Bitcoin wallet address, there's now a name on your Bitcoin wallet address because you've been connecting everything and shuffling money around, you name it. Years ago, when people realized that Bitcoin was pseudonymous, or like right on the cusp of around that time, the idea of a dirty coin appeared. This is old, but still exists. People don't talk about it anymore because it's basically, we've been so integrated into the legacy financial system that it's no longer really a thing because we have cryptocurrency exchanges who are always checking for transactions. The idea is, as I went over before, I believe also earlier this year, let's say you mine a Bitcoin and at some point you give it to your friend gives it to a friend, it goes to person D, person E, and person E is like, hey, I want to purchase something online that governments say I shouldn't purchase. And they buy something online with those Bitcoin and transfer the Bitcoin to someone as payment. By the time it goes to person G, there's now kind of a record of the transaction online that says, hey, this Bitcoin was used to pay for thing. It goes to person F, to person A, B, C, D, F, G, then H, and then I. And then at some point, person I tries to deposit it onto a cryptocurrency exchange. And then it gets sent back and or frozen. And they go, hey, can you tell me what happened to my coins? And the crypto exchange goes, sure. Okay. Well, the problem is that we see that somewhere along the way, these coins were actually used on a website that sold things. Can you tell us where you got the coins from? And then you have to provide information as to where you got the coins from. And your coins are now considered, in essence, dirty. You can maybe put something on top of the transaction or on the chain that says, like, this coin in particular was used for this transaction. Should it go to another crypto exchange? And then you say, hey, but the last person who got it is not associated with it, therefore let the coins through. That's a lot of work for companies. So years ago, the idea of Bitcoin actually having different value emerged. So you would assume that one Bitcoin is worth one Bitcoin. That changed a lot with the idea of a dirty coin. So one Bitcoin that has 800 transactions tied to it, there might be 3 really weird transactions that might get you flagged at some point. What won't is if you are mining the coins yourself, or if you're a rich enough person to be able to go to a mining pool and say, hey, when you guys are selling off your Bitcoin to pay for your electricity, I'd like to buy some of them, as they're just off the, flat out of the presses. They're brand new and they have no transactions tied to them except for when they get sent to you. These are clean coins and actually have a bit of a premium. Another story. So on top of that, the idea of being able to move crypto around at any given time now has like a dirty aspect to it because governments say that you can't move your money around however you so please. You always have to tell us when you're doing this. A number of years ago, a number of crypto exchanges had to follow OFAC rules as well as basically any other company. It doesn't have to be a crypto exchange. If you are sending money around, you have to let us know when the money's going, when it's moving, why it moved there, who held onto it. Kind of similar, very similar, exactly the same to the banking system. The idea is that everyone's like, okay, cool. That'll deal with the other systems. That'll deal with the crypto exchanges and the other companies and the institutions and the BlackRocks. But people who are mining Bitcoin don't really necessarily, in essence, air quotes, have to follow these rules. So people found out and were looking through and found out that there was actually a mining pool called F2 Pool who allegedly actually has started to censor transactions. Bitcoin is meant to be immutable. Anyone can use it at any time to send money anywhere, how they please. That's the point of Bitcoin. And then you hear that there's a company who bent the knee and basically has started to censor transactions that could appear to be illegal. When I said earlier, where do we go from here? This is a major thing, because this is either a step in one direction or a gigantic step in another. If they continue doing this, they are going to be shunned within the cryptocurrency space, and people will basically try to push them out. Because the precedent then becomes, well, if they did it for one transaction, and I think it says it somewhere that they did it for 6 different transactions, who's to stop them from doing it to 200 transactions? What happens if you're trying to send your mother money in another country because she needs it and you send it through Bitcoin and it doesn't go through? You're using Bitcoin because you don't want to use the old legacy system. You want to make sure that your mother gets that money without having to go through the bank because she lives in a country that banks don't touch. Very, 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 very slippery slope. So apparently the mining pool is based in Asia. I don't think it says exactly where. However, they did it based off of U.S. Sanctions ideas, which is also the reason why Binance and Changpeng Cao allegedly got in trouble for basically allegedly not following U.S. sanction rules. I know it's not the most exciting news in the entire world, but it's more of a, if they do this and then other mining pools do this as well, Bitcoin basically crumbles. And I mean explicitly. You think I'm over exaggerating? You really, and I implore you as well, if you get a chance, start to read, start to watch documentaries and do research on like the real Bitcoin maximalists. I don't mean the people who are screaming on Twitter. I mean people who really want a decentralized network that everyone around the world can use regardless of who you are, what you are, where you're from. For everyone, by everyone, everyone can mine, everyone can validate, everyone can run a node. This mining pool will be completely shunned. If everyone else begins to follow suit, Bitcoin will collapse and Ethereum will probably end up taking over as the #1 coin nearly instantaneously. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to fill you guys on in the next couple of weeks and months and things like that as to a lot of inner workings of what's currently going on. But yeah, I saw this news and I was like, that's crazy that you could even think of doing something like that. The point of Bitcoin is that we would run a system that is for everyone, for all 8 billion people that we can't conceptualize. Have you ever walked down a really busy street and thought like there are 8 billion of these things walking around on the planet? It's actually completely mind-boggling. But yeah, so we can only hope logically that nothing else like this ends up happening again, because this is absolutely crazy. But I'm going to move on. I have a lot more to say about it, but that's they should honestly be ashamed of themselves, because that's the F2 pool news. And yeah, let's move on. Also in extremely popular news, Coinbase International, the offshoot of Coinbase Global, apparently is going to be launching a bunch of new futures contracts. This was made extremely popular because anytime that Coinbase or Binance lists any brand new coins, everyone goes completely bananas for it. So this made popular news because it was, how do I say it? It was framed as Coinbase listing new trading pairs on their platform, which isn't untrue, but they're doing it for futures. Futures, as it stands right now, are absolute complete garbage, simply because 99% of them are all denominated in some form or way to the US dollar. And the coins don't even really get used. You're trading against the value of them in US dollars and not the actual coins themselves. And we've also had a very long history, 7 years, in the cryptocurrency space of seeing that crypto futures are historically used to simply lower our prices. Institutions who don't like crypto short and or bet against futures contracts based on certain coins. And we saw years ago that if enough of them put downward pressure and show that Cardano at the end of a futures contract is 2 cents across the board, across 18 different platforms, that people then begin to believe, well, Cardano is worth too much. It has to go down, and people begin to sell off their coins. So Coinbase, Binance, I don't know if Kraken has futures, but all the exchanges are looking for extra ways to make money. The last 2 years have been hard on everyone. Revenues are down, and this is why we've been seeing Coinbase and other platforms creating their own chains, making new contracts and other things like that as a way to have extra money coming in. Futures are not that popular. A lot of people who are into crypto tend to not actually use futures. It seems to be, once again, day traders and or people who are a part of an institution or something who are trying to get the value of the crypto traded against US dollars quite rapidly and or bet against it to be able to make money also on the side. So the new futures contracts are going to be against Cardano, Chainlink, Dogecoin, and Stellar, and they're all going to be against the coin or the trading pair PERP, PERP, standing for the perpetual contracts that they actually have. It says this listing places the 4 new cryptocurrencies alongside Bitcoin, Ether, and XRP, among others that have been listed since the platform was launched to serve non-US customers. So cool, wonderful, awesome, amazing. It's Coinbase. They're going to continue doing stuff like this. They should just be dealing completely in crypto, especially if this is only for people not inside of the US. This should have, and I'll say it this way, this should have or could have actually just been an ETP or even an ETF or some kind of a fund that dealt in the cryptos as well. But maybe futures contracts are just something that are a lot easier to get paperwork for in a number of different countries around the world. So that's the Coinbase new perpetual futures contract news. Yeah, let's move on. Also in completely unsurprising news, towards the end of November, the Bitcoin network marked its 6th consecutive difficulty rise, reaching a brand new all-time high at block 818496. The difficulty of mining Bitcoin soared by 5%, setting a new record of, a new record high of 67.96 trillion. That number doesn't, okay. A level that will persist until the next adjustment on the 9th of December of this year. The latest increase in Bitcoin's difficulty, an uptick of 5%, occurred on the evening of November 25th at block 818. Marks a rise in 808. Over the past 68 days, the cumulative increase stands at 23%. Despite this considerable rise over the past 2 months, the network hash rate hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. Do they have a chart? There's always a chart. Here we go, right here. Yeah, everyone's trying to mine Bitcoin. Why? Because it's currently easier right now than it is going to be in April. Once we get to April, the reward gets cut in half. So everyone's trying to mine as much as they possibly can before the halving actually happens. It's always the same. It's always the exact same idea. People could have done this over the course of the last 2 years, but seeing that the clock is winding down, everyone's rushing in right now to try and get in before things go completely bananas. Because what also ends up happening is, usually by the time, usually months after we get to the halving, Bitcoin's price reaches its previous all-time high, and people begin to make a lot of money just simply from mining the coins. This is why there's a huge amount of significance, and a lot of people talking about that even before the halving, we could reach our previous all-time high. This is going to put an enormous amount of extra pressure on the mining difficulty, as that's also going to skyrocket, because you then have the opportunity essentially to make $70,000 per thing that gets mined, as opposed to that getting cut in half, because the amount of issuance also gets cut in half as well. So yeah, not the craziest news. I don't know how many people care about mining news out there, but there's so much happening always in this space. There's so much activity. There's so much like energy that's being pumped into the space. I'm certain everyone can feel it in some sort of way. You must be able to feel that this is a very different energy than what we had at the beginning of this year. Do you remember the beginning of this year with the US SEC in the news every single day, just taking down companies and body slamming people in the street? Like it was really rough. So the fact that we are here, the year is almost over. Everyone's talking about a $45,000 Bitcoin before the year ends, the previous all-time high before we even get to the halving. It's going to add up to a lot of energy and a lot of money that's going to be sloshed around in this market over the course of the next couple of years. Yeah, it's really weird that we've gotten here. I said it before. I was not expecting all of this energy. Usually it takes the week or two before the halving, we see some momentum. About a month or two after the halving, it's quiet, but not really. Prices begin to go back up. Summertime rolls around. Everyone's making some good money. For us to already have doubled in price is like, oh boy, like something really big is going to happen next year. And that's still not even talking about 2025. We have nothing but constant accumulation news. We had something recently. Where was it? The Bitcoin supply is not moving. Like it's hyper illiquid. We had news like that over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, you all know what's going on. Stuff is getting real, and it's happening very, very fast. But yeah, that's the Bitcoin mining difficulty is rising as people are trying to mine as much as they can before the halving gets cut in half. I can't believe that we've gotten to this point where the halving is going to like make the supply, the new issuance rate, like that low. We're like very close to gold. Like we are literally to the point where like Bitcoin is already rarer than gold, but the actual issuance rate is going to like, gold will never be able to hit that number that Bitcoin is going to hit. It's quite a fascinating time in human history in a number of ways. We are witnessing history every single day, and I just want to make sure that you all know it because, yeah. I think that's definitely going to do it for this video. I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. What's everyone buying right now? I know there's a lot of, I see the discussions on Twitter, and I know people are buying very crazy coins. I'm kind of sticking to my general stuff. I'm looking at a lot of new or newer coins as well. Not a lot of them. There are some that seem quite interesting. There's a lot of coins that have kind of fallen off the radar, that have like huge partnerships with FIFA and all this other stuff that people have seemingly just forgot, that seem a little bit low in price for me at the moment. So I'm definitely accumulating, but it's more of I know everyone's buying crazy stuff right now. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.